What if I told you a woman's kitchen floor becomes the canvas for one of the world's most bizarre and unexplainable paranormal phenomena? Faces literally forming out of concrete, and no one, not scientists, priests, or skeptics, can agree on why or how. This is the story of the Bélmez Faces, Spain's haunted floor that refuses to be silenced. You ever hear of a haunted house? Sure you have, but what if I told you that there's a house where the floor, yeah, the actual kitchen floor, started growing human faces out of nowhere? No kidding. We're talking full-on, detailed, human-like faces just appearing in the concrete. People tried to scrub them off, dug them up, poured fresh cement. But guess what? The faces came back. Not once, not twice, for decades. And this didn't happen in some old horror movie. It happened in a small Spanish village. Real people saw it. Scientists studied it. Psychics got involved. Even skeptics couldn't fully explain it. And to this day, nobody really knows what the hell was going on in that kitchen. In this video, we're diving deep into one of the strangest, creepiest, and most fascinating unsolved mysteries in paranormal history. The Bélmez Faces. What caused them? Who or what was behind them? And why did they keep coming back? Trust me, you're going to want to see this. Let's get into it. Alright, so before we get into the weirdness, let me just give you a quick rundown of what actually happened, just so we're all on the same page. Back in 1971, in this small, quiet Spanish village called Bélmez de la Moraleda, a woman named María Gómez Camara was just going about her normal day when she noticed something strange on her kitchen floor. At first, it looked like a stain. No big deal, right? But then it started to take shape. Like, actual shape. It turned into an image of a human face. And not just a vague outline either. You could see eyes, a mouth, a full-on expression. Creeped out? Oh yeah. Naturally, she and her family tried to scrub it off. Nothing. They went even further. They broke the floor and replaced the entire section of cement. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Nope. A few days later, a new face appeared. And then another. And another. Different sizes, different expressions. Some looked peaceful. Others looked like they were in pain. And every time they tried to erase them, they just kept coming back. Word spread fast. First the neighbours came to see it, then the local press, and before long, people were travelling from all over Spain just to catch a glimpse of this so-called haunted kitchen floor. And get this, the faces didn't just appear, they seemed to evolve. Just like they were changing expressions. Like they were changing expressions over time. As if they were alive. I know how insane that sounds, but hang tight, because this is only the beginning. So now that you know what happened, let's talk about where it happened. Because this tiny village plays much bigger role in this mystery than you might think. The town is called Bélmez de la Moraleda. A mouthful, I know. But it's a small, sleepy village tucked away in the mountains of Andalusia, southern Spain. Back in the early 70s, this place had a population of just over 1,000 people. Everyone knew everyone. Life was simple, quiet, traditional. It was the kind of town where superstition, folklore, and deep Catholic beliefs were part of everyday life. Most families had lived there for generations, passing down stories of spirits, saints, and strange omens. So when something truly bizarre happened, people felt it on a deeper level. Now, right in the middle of this unassuming town stood the home of María Gómez Camara, an ordinary working class woman. Nothing fancy, just a modest little house with stone walls, old wooden furniture, and a small kitchen that would soon become the most famous room in Spain. And here's the wild part. Maria wasn't some ghost hunter or attention seeker. She was just a local woman living a quiet life with her family. By all accounts, she was deeply religious, respectful, and not one to stir up drama. So when she told people that a face had appeared in her kitchen floor, people listened, not because it was believable, but because she was. You've got to imagine the atmosphere here. This place wasn't full of tourists or cameras. This was a tight-knit, rural community where weird stuff didn't just happen. So when something did, it shook the town. Hard. Word of the strange kitchen spread through the village like wildfire. Neighbours came over, the local priest was called, and from that moment on, Maria's home wasn't just a house anymore. It became ground zero for one of the strangest mysteries in modern paranormal history. So, let's talk about the moment everything changed. It was August of 1971, just a regular day. Maria walks into her kitchen, same as probably had done 1,000 times before, but something was different. Right there, on the concrete floor, something was staring back at her. At first, she wasn't even sure what she was looking at. It looked like a stain, a weird one, sure, but nothing supernatural. Maybe moisture, a spill. Just one of those random shapes you don't really notice until your brain tries to make it out. But then it started to get clearer. Over the next few hours, or maybe days, depending on which version you hear, this shape began to sharpen until it wasn't just a stain anymore. It was a face. A human face. You could see the eyes, the outline of a nose, the curve of the lips. Not cartoonish or abstract. This looked real. And worse, the expression wasn't peaceful. It looked pained, almost like it was in agony. Naturally, Maria freaked out. Who wouldn't? She called in her family. They tried scrubbing it up. Soap, water, scouring pads. Nothing worked. So they brought in a neighbour. Same reaction. Shock, confusion, a growing sense that something very, very strange was happening. Eventually, Maria's husband decided to take drastic action. He grabbed a pickaxe and dug up the section of the floor where the face was, and they poured fresh concrete. Problem solved. Or was it? A few days later, another face appeared, in a slightly different spot, but still in the kitchen. Then another. And another. Over time, dozens of them. Some big, some small. Some that looked like men, some like women. All staring up from the floor with that same haunting, distressed look. By this point, the house was no longer just a family home. It was a magnet of curiosity, fear, and speculation. Word spread beyond the village. First it was the neighbours, then journalists, priests, local officials. People came with cameras, notebooks, questions, and sometimes holy water. But here's the kicker. No one could stop it. No matter what they did, cleaning, chipping, re-cementing, the faces kept coming back. As if something underneath the floor wasn't ready to be silenced. It wasn't just an isolated event anymore. It was a pattern, a phenomenon. And Maria's kitchen? It became the epicentre for one of the most baffling paranormal cases ever recorded. So by this point, the Bélmez Faces weren't just some local ghost story anymore. This thing had gone national. People were talking about it on the radio. Newspapers were running headlines, and Maria's kitchen turned into something of a paranormal pilgrimage site. But here's the thing. When something strange happens, especially in a small town, you get two types of people showing up. The ones who think it's supernatural, and the ones who are absolutely convinced there's a logical explanation. And both of them came out ready to prove something. First on the scene, local authorities and town officials. They wanted answers. But also, let's be real, they wanted to calm things down. They were worried this would spiral into mass hysteria or become a magnet for fraud. So they did what any reasonable people would do. They called in experts. Enter the scientist. A team of researchers from the Institute of Ceramics and Glass, part of Spain's Higher Council for Scientific Research, or CSIC for short, came in to analyse the material. These guys weren't ghost hunters, they were chemists and material experts. They took samples of the floor, specifically from facial images, and ran a series of lab tests. And here's where things got weird again. They found no trace of paint, no dyes, and nothing that would suggest the images had been created manually with tools or chemicals. The floor was just regular cement, but somehow the pigmentation in the cement had changed in a way that formed detailed, human-like faces. Now, to be fair, not everyone agreed. Some skeptics suggested that Maria or someone else in the house could have used something like acid or oxidizing agents to stain the concrete. But again, no chemical traces. And more importantly, why would someone keep doing it over and over, even under surveillance? Because yeah, that happened too. In one experiment, a section of the floor was sealed off entirely. They placed a clear plastic covering over one of the faces, then locked the kitchen for weeks. No one could go in, no one could tamper with anything. When they came back and removed the cover, the face had changed. It looked slightly different, like it had aged or shifted its expression. So now the skeptics were scratching their heads too. And of course, as soon as science got involved, so did the psychics, paranormal researchers, mediums, spiritualists. They all took turns visiting the house, and many of them claimed to feel a strong presence. Some even said the house was built over an old cemetery, or that the spirits were trying to communicate through the floor. Honestly, the deeper people dug, the less sense any of this made. Every time someone tried to explain it, whether with silence, spirituality, or skepticism, new questions popped up. So was it a hoax, a haunting, a psychological phenomenon? Something no one even understands yet? Whatever it was, the Bélmez Faces refused to be solved. Alright, so here's the part that really starts to mess with your head. It wasn't just that these faces kept showing up, it is the fact that they started to change. And I'm not kidding. Over time, people began to notice that the faces on Maria's kitchen floor weren't staying frozen in place. They were evolving. Subtle at first. Slight shifts in the eyes, changes in expression, the mouth opening or closing. But over the weeks and months, some faces look completely different from when they first appeared. Now think about that for a second. We're not talking about new faces just showing up in new spots. We're talking about existing ones morphing, as if they were alive in some strange, silent way. Like they were responding to something, or someone in the house. Even creepier, some of the faces seemed to show emotion. One week, a face would appear calm, then later, it would look angry or mournful, like it had witnessed something. And this wasn't just speculation, people actually documented it. Locals and researchers began taking photographs over time, placing them side by side to compare the changes. You can literally see the faces shifting in subtle ways, but undeniable ways. Some even reported the new features would fade over several days, as if they were forming in slow motion. One face, known as La Pava, became especially famous. It was one of the most detailed and expressive of the group, and people swear they saw it smile, then frown, and then slowly vanish over weeks. Now here's where things go to the next level. When researchers sealed off part of the kitchen under controlled conditions, locking it away for weeks with zero access, the faces inside still changed. New details emerged, others faded, and there was no human interaction whatsoever. So if this was a hoax, how the hell was it happening without anyone in the room? Even skeptics started to get uncomfortable here. This wasn't just someone painting something when no one was looking. This was something else, something that felt intelligent, or maybe even sentient. People began to wonder. Were the faces trying to communicate? Was it a message, a warning, a memory? Or were they just random manifestations of something we still don't understand? One thing was clear. Whatever this phenomenon was, it was still active. It wasn't a one-timed event. It was an ongoing mystery. And for years, it didn't stop. Alright, so at this point, we've got faces that appear, reappear, and change over time, and even resist chemical testing. You've got scientists scratching their heads, psychics claiming it's haunted, and a kitchen floor that just won't quit. So naturally, theories started flying around, and let me tell you, some of them are straight up wild, while others are surprisingly grounded. Let's break them down. Let's start with the supernatural side of things. This was the go-to explanation for most locals and spiritual investigators. The most popular theory? That the house was built on top of a mass grave or ancient burial site, and the faces were the spirits of the dead trying to make contact. Some even claimed that they were souls of people who died violently, which could explain the agonizing expressions on many of the faces. And here's where it gets creepy. There was actually a ground excavation beneath the kitchen, and guess what they found? Human remains. Skulls, bones, even headless skeletons. Just buried, just a few feet below the surface. Now, that doesn't prove the faces were ghosts, obviously, but it didn't help skeptics sleeping better at night. For believers, this was all the confirmation they needed. Spirits trapped beneath the floor making themselves seen the only way they could. It's a classic haunted house kind of stuff, but with a physical visual twist. Some psychics also claimed that Maria herself may have had a talent or latent psychic ability, like a medium without knowing it, and her presence somehow acted as a channel for the spirits to manifest. Wild, yeah, but again, nothing else was explaining this thing. Then there's the scientific camp. These folks tried to stay grounded. They looked at paranormal psychology, chemical reactions, pareidolia, which is the thing where your brain sees faces in random patterns like clouds or toast. One theory suggested that the floor had moisture pockets or mineral deposits that just happened to resemble faces. And once people noticed one, their brain started seeing more, sort of like a self-reinforcing illusion. Others proposed that the images could have been unintentional photographic transfers or a phenomenon similar to concrete effervescence, where salt and mineral patterns could cause discoloration. But again, that didn't explain the evolving faces or why they would appear under sealed conditions. Even controlled tests, where observers were locked out, showed images forming without interference. So the scientific crowd, they weren't fully on board with the ghost theory, but they also couldn't confidently say what was happening. Now, here's the skeptic angle. This group had a pretty clear stance: hoax. Some skeptics claimed that Maria, or maybe someone in her family, was secretly painting or chemically treating the floor to create the faces. The idea was attention, tourism, and maybe even a little money. But here's the problem with that theory. It assumes a lot. First off, no one ever caught anyone in the act, even with constant observation. Second, the house was often sealed and monitored. And third, Maria never seemed interested in fame or cashing in. She refused money, she didn't sell tours, and by all accounts, she just wanted a normal life. Even a skeptic who believed it was a host admitted that if it was fake, it was one of the most consistent, long-running, and skillfully executed paranormal hoaxes ever pulled off. So yeah, it's still technically possible, but it's one hell of a long con. So what's the truth? Maybe it was a trick of chemistry, maybe it was a psychic imprint, or maybe something we don't have a name for yet. But that's what makes the Bélmez Faces so fascinating. It's not just the mystery, it's that no one has ever been able to put a bow on it, even after decades of trying. So what did happen to the Bélmez Faces? Did they disappear? Were they explained? Did the mystery get solved? The short answer, no, not really. Long answer? Well, let's unpack it. After Maria passed away in 2004, many people expected the phenomenon to stop. She had always been at the centre of the story, even if she never claimed to understand it. Some believed she was the unconscious medium through which these manifestations were happening. So once she was gone, that should have been it, right? But here's the thing. The faces didn't stop completely. Even after Maria's death, new reports surfaced that faint images still appeared occasionally in the home, although much less frequently and with less intensity. It was as if the house was slowly going quiet, but not quite silent. Today the house still stands in Bélmez, a little worn, a little aged, but still holding onto its mystery. And yes, you can actually visit it. Over the years, the site has become something of a paranormal landmark. Researchers, tourists, and thrill seekers from all over the world here have travelled to see it firsthand. There have even been documentaries, books, podcasts, you name it. In fact, the phenomenon has become part of Spain's cultural folklore. It's taught in paranormal studies, it's debated in psychology classrooms, and it's even included in scientific journals, despite never being officially explained. And while the town itself remains humble and small, it now lives under the shadow of this strange legacy. Locals still remember when it all began. Some believe deeply in the supernatural explanation. Others roll their eyes and think it was all a weird fluke. But here's the crazy part. More than 50 years later, no one has ever been able to recreate the Bélmez Faces under the same conditions. Not with the same materials, not with the same effects, not with the same resistance to analysis. So whether you believe it was ghosts, hoax, or in between, it is still unresolved. And that's what keeps the mystery alive. Because in a world obsessed with explanations and logic, the Bélmez Faces are a chilling reminder that some things just don't add up. So after everything we've seen, the changing faces, the scientific tests, the skeptics, the psychics, the decades of questions, one big question still hangs in the air. Can we ever really explain the Bélmez Faces? Honestly, maybe not. This isn't one of those stories where we can wrap everything up in a nice, neat little bow and say, here's the trick. Because there isn't one. Every time someone gets close to an explanation, something new breaks the theory wide open again. Maybe it was a haunting, maybe it was a psychological suggestion, or maybe it was María, or maybe it was just something that didn't fit into the categories we've created. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It lingers. It makes you question what's possible and what you're willing to believe. It sits in the grey zone where logic and the unexplained collide. And no matter which side you lean toward, you can't deny that something strange happened in that kitchen. And maybe it's still happening. So now it's your turn. What do you think? Was it a paranormal imprint, a psychological trick, or the greatest unproven hoax in modern history? Drop your theories in the comments. I'm seriously curious to hear them. Let's see how many different angles we can explore together. And if you want more stories just like this, where the unexplained meets reality, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we've got more mysteries coming your way soon. Because in a world full of answers, it's the questions that keep us watching.